6 o'clock on the 3rd of August 2020. Due to the current government guidance on social distancing and the COVID virus, this meeting will not be open for members of the public to attend. Arrangements have been made for press and public to watch live via the council's online webcast channel on YouTube. So this evening we've got the Vice Chair, Councillor Kent, Councillor Massey, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Howden, Councillor Coxall in the chamber, with Councillor Okinardi joining us on remotely, along with the Council Chief Executive and Anna Eastgate, who's Director for the Lower Thames Crossing. So I'm going to make a start to go to apologies for absence. I've received one apology for absence, and that's Councillor Hebb, who will be substituted by Councillor Howden this evening. Any other apologies for absence? Thank you, Matt. Move to item 2, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of March, found on pages 5 to 8. Have all members read this? Are there any statements or questions in relation to the minutes? No, in that case, I move that the minutes be approved. They are approved. I'll take that as an approval. Moving on to items of urgent business. I've not received any items of urgent business for this evening, although members would have been sent the pack on Thursday. There is a hard copy here, should you require it for this evening's discussions, in relation to the Lower Thames Crossing executive summary and a review of design, refinement, consultation response. We've all received that, or received the email. Yep. Moving on to item 4, declarations of interest. I'm going to ask if any member, either here or here online, have got any declarations of interest. I'm looking, I see no declaration of interest. So then we'll move on to item 5, which can be found on page 9, which is the Lower Thames Crossing supplementary consultation response. As mentioned in the preamble, we received an email on Thursday with the outline of the response that's been put together on our behalf. As we know, the course being consulted on the 4 key points, and that's the noise barriers, with the location and extent of proposed barriers are of significant concern in relation to what's been proposed. A section of false cutting have been removed at various locations across the route and replaced with noise barriers ranging from 1 metre in height up to 6 metres in height, which is obviously quite a significant height. Previous consultation feedback provided to the council was that the road was to be kept as low as possible and as much in cut and cover or false cuttings as necessary, which doesn't appear in relation to this amendment. At the section consultation stage, it was clear that it had been taken into account. However, early feedback appears to this had been lost in this latest proposal, with no justification for the changes. We've got landscaping and ecological mitigation. There are some minor improvements and changes to the scheme, but it doesn't go far enough to mitigate the harm from the proposed development. As we know, the traveller site that will be immediately on the proposed site is being a new location has been made for that near Gammon Fields. We have been in consultation with the travelling community in relation to this, along with Highways England, and I understand that there's an agreement to move the site. It would now be down to obviously residents also having a say through the consultation process, and then the non-motorised users. I don't know why they say horses and people. The refinements and changes to the footpath, the removal of the prospective connection between the A13 between Stiffer Road and Long Lane is an omission, and it reduces and increases the network north and south across the A13. What is needed is more comprehensive and strategic approach to mitigate this impact of the road through the borough in general, and indeed on this specific item There's utility diversions, as we can see from the response, still appears to be somewhat excessive and must be reviewed and refined as much as possible. Obviously, we've got concerns about the large working area that arises from that. It does seem to be, certainly in my opinion, much larger than we would expect for the works that we've been doing on the A13. So I can't see why it shouldn't be so large for this proposed route. So that's a general outline of the summary of the response. So I'm going to open this up to the floor for discussion. The process we'll use is the process we've been using for all other meetings, which is those members in the chamber first, and then in this case, Councillor Canardi, if she's got anything that she needs to add. When I call Councillor Canardi in and she wishes to add something, just remind everyone to make sure that their mics are off so it doesn't cause the feedback. So with that, I'm going to move to the room. Have any members got any statement in relation to both the supplementary paper that was sent Thursday and indeed the reports in front of us this evening? Councillor Coxall, did you put your hand up? Or? No? Yep.
Yeah, I did. I started off. And this was led as a very small, minor changes consultation. In fact, it's actually quite significant changes, really, with the actual increase of the road heights, removing some of the cutting and putting the 6-metre barriers there, which was drastic, really, I would call it, especially around the Grays area, where all the hard work we've done for the last 2 years in talking about mitigation seems to have been put by and forgotten. In fact, the design council work that the design council did in the previous time and went with around the Mydyke and around the work there, and they seem to have gone back. And we've gone back to the very early stages of this, and it's better to skip these minor changes and to lease it as minor changes. I urge everyone, it's really important we get this document in, reinforce it to Highways England that these aren't minor changes, these are drastic changes in the areas around Thurrock. In fact, have gone backwards to where we thought we'd work towards some changes. So I don't know why they decide to ignore what the Design Council have done. But I must congratulate, as well as that, the decisions around the Traveller site, which was, I think, despicable, really, I would call it, the way Highways England performed around them and around the homes. And it was thank you to our council officers actually engaging with the residents there. So remember, it is their home, and just to not engage correctly during a consultation, I think it was really important. I think I congratulate the council officers for working hard with our community down there to make sure that they are fully alive and aware of what's happening and what's planned here.
I think, Councillor Coxall, yes, it was good when we both had that update to our officers took time to go out in person and engage with the community down there to ensure that their voices are heard. I think that's paid off. Any other member in relation to this in the chamber? Looking around, no, I've got none. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kent.
Yeah, I don't want to kind of spin this out for any longer than it needs to be. I think we're all still on the same side, still implacably opposed to this crossing and the damage that we know that it will do to our community, the damage it will do to our environment, the ecological damage it will do. And the bottom line is that it still will do nothing to actually improve the resilience of the local road network here in Thurrock. It'll still snarl up on a regular basis, especially in the west of the borough. It does nothing to improve the resilience of the regional road network and nothing to improve the resilience of the national road network. And I hope that we would be brave enough, if that weren't the case, to say that we were supporting this. But it doesn't, so we shouldn't. So we must be absolutely clear that we're all on the same side, that we still believe that this is the wrong thing for Thurrock. I think the report is thorough. I think it's well worked. I think that especially the evidence that was presented to us recently is really thorough. It's a good piece of work, and I would endorse the report.
I think, Councillor Kent, yes, it is. We all clearly have what might be perceived as minor changes in our head, what we feel minor and what other organisations feel minor. But if this is minor, I'd hate to see what the major changes would be. And again, if we look back, I think it was actually in a previous meeting that we've signed the minutes off for earlier. aspects of this road that may have helped reduce the impact. So the till turn off, for instance, being removed. It just seems to be, a very bad idea, poorly constructed, put together, amended in relation to what inputs come from Thurrock, and then that will be thrown out at the last minute on this consultation. Councillor Canardi, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Hi, good evening. You can hear me, yeah? Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, good, yeah. Thank you very much for this report proposal to the design refinement. My concern is been picked up of it already, but it's on the effects on people and communities. And I was actually reading the guide, their guide, where they mentioned the effect, people and communities, but I'm not too sure if it is relating to health impact, because as it said in the report that the council have put together, the impact assessment on health and equalities has not been shared by the highways agency. And so if we have to assume that when they talk about effect on, about people and communities, they meant the health impact. I'm not too sure. The reason I'm saying this is that I've been informed by some of my residents that they have been specifically written to, some of them, about the fact that, their proprietary rights, for their house or whatever, there might be effect on interest, on them, that they have to sort of look at this, the next phase of consultation. And some of them are worried. So that's why I'm not sure whether when they said about environmental impact, because that's where they put in the peoples and communities. So they said environmental impact, but we really need to be sure about the fact that they're not meaning like taking areas from members of our residents, like how this proposal is going to impact on the residential property. I don't know. But I don't know if to just bring it up so that you are aware of this issue. I don't know if you are aware that they've written to communities and telling them that their land interests may be affected by the route. So I don't know if anybody has heard about it, but in Tilbury, people have been contacted about that. So I think that's why I needed to bring it up so that you're sure that when they mention people and communities, they're not talking about their well-being or their interest. So I know we are all singing from the same hymn sheet because we do not want this, but I just thought I would bring that up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Canardi. It's a point that's well worth bringing up. There have been regular complaints all the way through this process about lack of information from Highways England, or them saying they're going to do one thing, and then when we actually see what goes out to residents, it falls way short of what we would expect from ourselves, let alone from a government body. So it's obviously well worth sort of bringing that up at this point. Any other member got anything? Councillor Massey?
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all in agreement. We don't like this project as a whole. This refinement, I agree with Councillor Cockshaw, was the only good part of it maybe is the traveller site, which seems that's actually a positive step in the right direction. But looking at things like the noise barriers, it's more sort of questions and answers, and it's not been refined. And we're still talking about transport modelling. This is one of the key things that Highways England were really big on right at the start of this process, saying about how the modelling is in place to show how this would fix the problem. And I see here the council shares concerns, and that really worries me.
Thank you. Just to verify, Councillor Byrne or Councillor Howland, do you want anything to add in relation to this? I think that's obviously all members speaking on this. I'm just going to bring in Anna. Anna, is there anything you wish to add at this point?
Thanks, Councillor Gledhill. A couple of things worth noting. The health impact assessment and equalities impact assessment won't be available until the DCO is submitted. Highways England have confirmed that we won't get to see that until the application is submitted to the Planning Inspectorate. So understanding the true health impacts and how they've been assessed is coming to the council rather late in the day, to be quite frank. So that's rather disappointing, and we have written to Highways England and expressed our disappointment with that. The other thing to note relates to page 14 of the report, paragraph 4.4 onwards, where we talk about a virtual consultation event in this instance due to COVID-19. Clearly, we've got quite a lot of concerns about that due to internet connectivity. The very people who are shielding as a consequence of COVID-19 are the people who need to understand the impacts that this scheme is going to have. And obviously, our residents have got bigger worries and concerns at the moment, protecting their health and safeguarding the interests of their families, both from personal circumstances and even potentially financial impacts as a consequence of this. So we do have grave concerns about the adequacy of consultation, particularly this time round, and the availability and accessibility of it. The third point I wanted to make was just to pick up the comments made by Councillor Okonade in relation to the letters. So we are aware that a significant number of residents have been written to across the borough. We have been made aware recently that where there are former council housing estates that were in a single title way back, before rights to buy came in and people purchased their council houses, the parcels of land were held in one single title rather than individual titles. And so as those properties have been sold off, rights have been retained in relation to a larger estate area rather than just the individual property rights. So we understand that a large number of people have been written to because their property once formed part of a larger title, if that makes sense, and they still have rights and interests in relation to land that's affected. I think most people that are going to be detrimentally affected, I think currently there's about 27 properties in the borough that are due to be compulsorily acquired as a consequence of the site. Anybody else who's been written to, who's been impacted, is generally what we term as a Part 1 claim. So it's normally in relation to noise, potential noise impacts once the road is open. And so Highways England will continue to write to them and consult them, because those residents, if they are detrimentally affected, will have up until a year after the road is open to make a claim for compensation as a consequence of noise. So that's the large part of why a number of people have been written to, if that helps.
Thank you, Anna. And as you remember, when we did speak to Highways England in relation to this tranche of consultation, I did suggest that perhaps they wait until the point where we could have larger groups meeting and for them to find a suitable place for that. But obviously they needed to continue at their own timetable and rejected that as an idea, which is somewhat a bit of a shame, because we were hoping for much better engagement with them all the way through, although in fairness they have actually been a little bit more open in certain circumstances. But as you say, we're still waiting for some of the largest and more important reports to do with health impacts and so on. It is interesting also about the housing plot of land. Wasn't aware that kind of explains why so many people have got letters who actually wouldn't be directly affected, but the area in which they're listed is affected. That kind of would have been nice for them to have explained that as well. So with that, if there's nothing else for anybody to add, we have recommendations on page 10, and that's the committee maintains its objection in principle to the Lower Thames crossing in Thurrock. 1.2, the committee agrees the consultation response set out in Appendix A, local authority response for submission to Highways England by the 12th of August 2020. 1.3, that the committee agrees to delegate authority to the Chief Executive and Director of Place in consultation with group leaders, portfolio holder for regeneration, the chair of the LTC task force, to make any final minor changes to the consultation response in Appendix A, which may arise during the consideration of the consultation response by General Services Committee and the Lower Thames Task Force. This gives basically the opportunity just to add final tweaks to it from tonight. And that the committee agrees to delegate authority to the Chief Exec and Director of Finance, Governance and Property in consultation with portfolio holder for regeneration to finalise the consultation response in relation to the Council's land holdings affected by the Lower Thames Crossing scheme. Are all four of those agreed? Agreed. Is that agreed? Just want to put your thumb up. That'll be fine. Councillor Canardi, excellent. Thank you. Okay, with that item complete, we move to item 6, which is on page 23, Lower Thames Crossing Task Force, and that is over to Councillor Coxall to give the report. Thank you, Councillor Coxall.
Right. First of all, it's actually we moved towards the September deadline that the Highways England have mentioned in their final consultation. The DCO application will be submitted, so they say at the moment. That gives the final very few opportunities then and very little influence left for the public and us to influence it in consultation, as in none. So we move forward with these complex negotiations will start with Highways England and other elected members. And we need to have frank conversations with the Highways England and maybe some private sessions with our own legal advice and making sure that as elected members, we are making sure we're defending all residents of Thurrock and about their position that the full council has given us. None of this was possible with the Lower Thames Crossing as it constituted at the moment, we feel. The General Services Committee is the senior committee of the council, and it's only right and proper this General Services has the powers that it should be determined instead of which it did and moved it to the Lower Thames Crossing during the consultation process, which was only right when we wanted to deliver as much as we can in wider consultations. I thought this was a great opportunity tonight as we close to the public consultations to see how we can move forward. And it's not to say that General Services cannot and shouldn't really, it should do to specific working groups to make sure we have specific areas of interest and working from here. But we do need to actually get all the elected members, as in all the council, which is represented here, instead of the Lower Thames Crossing reporting to Cabinet, which is, let's be honest, the Cabinet reporting to Cabinet is a Conservative Cabinet without any other opposition of members on it. And we're not that. We've, as Councillor Kent mentioned earlier, we're all united in one position. That's the position that the 49 councillors voted on when they delegated this power to us. And we want to carry on with that. And I think it's the only proper that General Services has moved forward in complex negotiations and make sure the fight is in there personally. And calling Highways England to this committee would be very helpful to make sure that this committee, and they see that there is a cross-party, powerful committee that's actually deciding and determining it. I hope the conversation tonight has become reasonable, and I'm open to any suggestions of how we can move forward. But I feel it's really important that the Cabinet is not just Cabinet saying this voices, is to make sure that we do have this power here. We have an opportunity of 2 years as we move into September when it goes to DCO. It is critical that we do all speak as one voice, and we have opportunities to make sure that we can actually see you, other opposition members, can see the same information that myself and Councillor Glegg will see. And we like to be more enlightening and more open to everyone. And that's the place where we've been elected. We've been elected to make decisions, and I think it's an important thing that the elected people move forward and be as wide as possible. Thank you. And any questions, really?
Thank you, Councillor Coxall. Has anyone got any questions for Councillor Coxall? Councillor Bermsing first.
I think we need to get the message across that this is not a downgrade in the task force. This is adding more strength. In fact, something bringing more to the party for the residents. We still have people like Laura fighting our fight, so there's still that part of it. I would like to see, could we have the task force and General Services sort of work in tandem and then go off as the General Service Committee? Because it just seems like stop now when it's like stop dead and start. Could you bring in like Fraser, chair a couple of meetings and then actually
I'm open with that. I think the consultation, in case there is a separate consultation that they change, I think it is. It's just when the closed consultation is what I'm concerned about. I want to see when it goes into DCO. If DCO doesn't go in September, I think we're open to making sure that there is. And if it's still a no DCO date, But as I see, it's going to be I'm assuming Highways England. I don't think anyone speaks about it too because it's a public meeting. But I think if the Highways England are trying to get it into this year's budget and this five-year budget number, and this is an important process. So once it's there, I think it's really important that ourselves and I don't want to see private conversations with the officers and the conversations with lawyers. I think I want to share that with everyone who's elected to make sure that in all of everyone. And I think the Lower Thames Crossing, how we do it, I'm happy to Fraser can carry on and as chair has just been elected chair of it. It's not about who picking that. It's about how we deliver elected people of this for what we were elected for and how we move forward. I think we can actually constitute a working group out of that and making sure Fraser can chair some working groups because there's important work still to be done, as you just heard, that we still haven't got this and we won't hear it until the DCO process, the environmental impacts, the health impacts. So I think there'll be an important working group to deliver specific work for this council around that. And whenever I've seen subcommittees, and I've served on some task and finish groups, and the task and finish group is just it tasks and finishes and comes back here with a specific piece of work that we can look at. And I think there's a definite piece of work needs to be done with environmental impacts and about what issues of health issues is coming, because we haven't had that during there. Again, that needs to be specifically looked at. Your personal question, because I'm rambling slightly, but yes, you should. There should be, and I think there's an opportunity until such time as the DCO is, and I'm happy to make an amendment until such time as the DCO is in. The task of Lower Thames Crossing. Good. So that if they don't hit their target in September, I think the Lower Thames Crossing still should exist. But the only reason is that after that, we do need to knuckle down, as I say, not being nasty to the councillors on the General Services Committee or the people who are sitting on that one.
Thank you, Councillor Coxwell. Councillor Howden?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Yeah, I think that, as Councillor Coxwell just outlined, allowing the group to carry on until the DCO does make a great deal of sense, but at that stage we need to make sure that this committee does have that sole voice. If we have a huge amount of groups everywhere, we'll get disparate voices. We need to have one strong voice, and as far as I'm concerned, the full council is still clear. All 49 members are implacably opposed to this route. It's not practical to have full council try and manage this process, but the General Services Committee, which is actually skewered in favour of all parties rather than just the Conservative majority, I think this committee makes a great deal of sense to make sure that we do have that buy-in, and it provides an executive forum because there are things that the General Services Committee can do that no other body can do because it's an executive. The only other executive forum that can do that is the Cabinet because we are an exec. But we've made a judgment. We don't think it's appropriate for Cabinet to assume all of those powers. So what is the way forward? Well, this is an existing forum to do that. And I think that is a correct way to make sure that as this process goes forward, one body has got that power, that weight, that heft to actually make the arguments that are important for Thurrock, make them in a timely and succinct manner.
Thank you, Councillor Howden. Councillor Kent? I looked down, sorry. Okay, Councillor Massey.
Thank you. I do think it's really important the public have a voice in this, and I think that should go up until the DCO and perhaps beyond that. So time is everything, as they say, and I think September's ambitious for Highways England to get that in, and I would like to see the task force ideally continue until that DCO at the very least. So I do welcome those changes. I think the task force came together because a lot of residents of Thurrock felt like their voice wasn't being heard. So I think it's really important that we somehow bring that on board and retain that. But although it can't go along with some of the discussions that you mentioned, that we somehow feed into that and report back and could make sure that we're engaging with the residents and keeping them up to date, making sure all the changes and just going forward encompassing everyone rather than literally just this chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. Councillor Kent?
Yeah, Chair, I've of course read the report very carefully, and I listened to the argument from Councillor Coxall and Councillor Howden. But I actually want to come back to the report. The report is asking us to disband the task force, and I can see no justification in the report whatsoever for doing that, and I've heard no justification this evening for doing that. The report says that the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force be disbanded in accordance with its terms of reference. But then if we look at the terms of reference, which are wonderfully brief, it says things like to receive any reports which is required to make recommendations upon by officers, cabinet or other relevant committees of the council. That doesn't end when the order is introduced in September or whenever. To receive a monthly update of all council activity in relation to Lower Thames Crossing by way of an update report. That doesn't end when the submission's made. I would argue that goes on all the way through the actual build of the crossing, let alone through the planning stage. To invite strategic partners to meet with them to gather evidence to aid the council's work in relation to the LTC. Again, I think that's important. I think it's important that we keep that work up for as long as is necessary. To commission or undertake research on behalf of the council in relation to the LTC. Again, I see no reason why that work should end from this committee, from the task force in September. I can see no justification for it whatsoever. I think that involving the public as wholly as we have, for as long as we have, has been absolutely vital when it comes to taking the community with us and ensuring that the community believe that we are on their side. And I have to say that attempting to do this in the way it's been done has been a slap in the face to many people in the community who have put in lots of time and lots of effort. To hold a Lower Thames Crossing Task Force meeting on the Monday, and not to mention that a report's been written that says that it should be wound up, having portfolio holders as members of that task force that didn't know or didn't mention it, when officers didn't mention it, is just a slap in the face to those people. And I think we should all really just consider how we have acted, and we should be issuing an apology to people who sit on that task force, those people who aren't councillors, but people who are giving up their time freely to do their bit. I think I listened very carefully to what Councillor Coxall said, and he spoke about maybe having some private sessions of this body in order to look at evidence. I've got no problem with that. I think in many cases that may be very sensible. You don't have to scrap the task force in order to do that. Those two things can both happen. And I think by saying that you don't want the task force to exist, you risk giving the impression that all you want to do is to keep all influence and all power to a small group of councillors, keep things secret, and keep the community out. That's the impression that's given. In the absence of any justification whatsoever for winding up the task force, that's the only conclusion that you can come to. Now, we've heard Councillor Coxall talking about setting up other groups. That's fine, but they're not in this report. There's no recommendation for setting up those task groups, those task and finish groups, call them what you will. That being the case, the only thing we can do this evening is to vote against this report, to vote against these recommendations, and then if the portfolio holder wants to come back subsequently with a different set of recommendations, then that's what he should do.
Thank you for that, Councillor Kent. But just to be very clear, that's not the only option that's open tonight. Councillor Coxall's report is here. He can put amendments to the report. He can put different recommendations in relation to that. Indeed, I've described very, very quickly a potential one for the first one that needs to change. And indeed, he can add a third recommendation in relation to setting up extra task force. So please do not try and push people down a route that is the only route when that's not correct. Councillor Howden and then Councillor Coxall.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I take Councillor Kent's words in the spirit in which I hope they were intended. In terms of the assertion that this is an attempt to keep people out, what I'd say is this is a public forum sat on by democratically elected members of the public. It is politically balanced between all of the parties in the chamber. Actually, it's more weighted to opposition parties. It is pretty evenly demographically, geographically constituted. Rectory, Chafford, Grays, East Tilbury. I'm not normally here, so there's not normally two Homesteads voices. I think this is a very, very good forum to include the public, a cross-party public body like this. And the fact of the matter is, we are going to have some very, very important, very, very aggressive fights with Highways England. We need one body with executive strength to have that fight. We cannot have a series of bodies and Highways England in the position of saying, OK, the Lower Thames Task Force was constituted by Thurrock Council. Thurrock Council also has the General Services Committee. Which fora are we listening to? We need to make it very, very clear that this is the democratically elected cross-party forum that has got executive power to take action. We don't want this to be a cabinet show. We want to bring people in. And essentially, in terms of resident engagement, there are all sorts of things this body can do. Councillor Cockshaw has alluded to specific working groups. There is no reason General Services Committee cannot be held in different areas of the borough if people physically would like to wander along and attend a meeting. There are, and speak at this forum. There are loads of ways we can make General Services Committee available to the public and out there, but there is no other way, legal or constitutional, to create a body that is this cross-party or has the slate of powers we have. We need Highways England to look at this committee and know it has the full backing and full weight, financially and legally, of this authority. The Lower Thames Crossing fight is a serious fight, and that means that it has to be taken at the highest level. This is the highest level with the exception of Cabinet. We do not want Cabinet to be making these decisions on behalf of all our residents. We want to bring this entire authority in, and that's the approach that's being outlined this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Howden and Councillor Cockshaw, if you'd like to.
I just answer the question about why I haven't. This was a conversation piece today. It's actually good that we're having this conversation because the idea was what do we do next in the next battle of this fight, and this is what it's about. This is about the Lower Thames Crossing was designed because we constituted that to the General Services Committee. And we said, well, we can't just do it at the moment while there's a public consultation process. That's my mindset right at the beginning of this process. And we had that process of actually engaging in business leaders and community, the people who are affected on the route and across there. Funnily enough, it's not got people in the west of the borough who are sitting on there as residents, as non-elected. So it just needs to make sure now we've got an opportunity to re-look at it as we go to the next stage. I'm very happy with what working groups, this conversation we can have, what type of groups, how they're constituted. Let's go forward as we move forward to the DCO after that. And I'm very happy not to have that conversation come back again afterwards. And if we don't want to discuss it tonight, what type of groups we do want, and we want to move that at the DCO process. If we now delay to the DCO is entered, then that meeting after the DCO is entered, what do we want to do then? But make sure that Highways England know we're taking this seriously, we're taking it to the next level, and we want to move forward with one voice. And if we do have them, what happens with Highways England when the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force and there's some residents want to speak to Highways England now, and it's got to be, we've got to have it here, and I'd rather have the residents come here and speak here and talk to us here than actually have another body task and finishing that's not going to get, that's no end date to a task and finish group, which is as good as what it was set up for, the working group. If you want to set up a different body tonight, that's it. But I personally think we should, like Councillor Massey's just said, and the independent councillors both really said, can you wait until after the DCO? I'm very happy to put amendments saying that at the end of the DCO process, we will then relook at what happens to move forward and how we work out working groups. I'm very happy tonight if you want to reconstitute a different group that John Kent's saying, but we've just got to have some way of working one voice, and that's what's important, not two voices.
Thank you, Councillor Coxwell. Councillor Okanade, if you'd like to come in there.
Yeah, thank you very much. You would remember that at the initial inception of the task force, I was on the membership then. I was just thinking that wouldn't it be good to respect and sample the opinion of particularly the co-opted members of this committee, of this task force, because we have 4 co-opted members from the community, and I think it would be good courtesy would demand that you sample their opinion and see if they think that there is not going to be any added value to the council or to the support of the process with the Highways England. But I think that we should have been the first point of call. And I want to ask and to be sure that even after the DCO has been submitted, are we going to retain officer time on the council, or is that going to be removed as well? It's a question. So if you could answer after this. But essentially, I think that we should sample the opinion of everyone. And obviously, it makes more sense not to disband this task force now, or maybe later. But it used to be a vibrant meeting where community are interested and eager to attend. But I don't know of now, because I'm no longer a member for some time, but I don't know what's happening now. But it used to be that. And I think that the willingness and commitment of members of the community, and I know we do have a pressure group as well on the Lower Thames Crossing issue. So I think it may be good just to sample opinion of these people and see if we can bring them along as the proposer to disband the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Okanade. Councillor Cox, just want to respond to the question.
Well, the question is, it's actually 100% reason. Another reason why the council officer time is in it, and we've got to make, someone's got to make a decision to spend money on that, or more money, allocate more money. The cabinet can allocate that and so that, but it's the money is allocated from this committee to spend. Now, how much do we spend on our lawyers? When do we spend that? How do we spend it? What extra time do we need? The officer time at the moment, and that is important decisions that I am, and the officers are talking to me, and I'm saying I don't really want to make them decisions. I want to make them decisions at a meeting of the senior committee. I can't at the moment because this committee has decided the Lower Thames Crossing task force is the committee to talk about that, and that is a prime example why I think this is why the paper's here tonight. The money needs to be spent on what do we do, who do we employ more, how do we fight this the public inquiry. This will cost a lot of money to this council, and it needs not just a Conservative cabinet to make that decision. I want that decision made in here, so it makes Highways England know they're fighting one council. But to obfuscate that out to people who they've done fantastic work, or the non-co-opted members on there, but they're not elected to make them decisions to spend public money. That's the job we got elected for, to spend public money, and that's why we're under duty bound to spend public money, and how we're here honour the public purse that the taxpayers have paid the people of Thurrock, and that's our job to spend it, and that's why we're elected. Otherwise, why would we have elections?
Should we thank Councillor Cox? I'm going to let Councillor Kent come back in because they did allow Councillor Howden to come back in as well.
We've heard some really good points from Councillor Coxall, but they're good points that are addressing an item that we don't have before us tonight. The item before us tonight is whether we should disband the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force. It's not about where decisions should be taken. It's not about whether the correct forum is Cabinet or is the General Services Committee. It's not about whether we should be setting up task and finish groups. It's about whether we should wind up the Lower Thames crossing task force. And for Councillor Coxall to say that this item is nothing but a conversation piece, I mean, it's a good attempt, Mark, to try and throw some smoke at it. You know that you've got this one wrong, that if you'd have brought this paper in a different way, with a different set of proposals, you may have had a chance. But to allow a meeting to go ahead on the Monday when you knew that this is what you were going to propose to do was crass. It was crass. I say again, if you want to bring back a different paper, to have a different conversation, to set up a different structure, then fine. I may well agree that, but I cannot agree this tonight.
I think Councillor Byrne, you had your hand up in indication.
Cross-party decision making, yeah, I love that one. Actually being able to be seriously aggressive with Harveys England. Yes, please, can I do that tomorrow? But I have to agree that we need some sort of structure that the public feel like they're on board with this as well. So if we can get that in, then I love what I've heard so far.
Councillor Cox, should I respond to both of those?
As I said, like that's what we're going to just, this body can set up like any groups it likes afterwards. We need to, as we move to the DCO process, I think that's what this document here is. It finishes, the DCO, as the Highways England say, it finishes in September, which can be any time in the early, so it could be 4 weeks away after this straight away, and straight into a DCO process. This is the process, the last meeting before it goes into DCO. Now, as far as I can see, if it doesn't go into DCO, I'm quite happy. We can have an end conversation of what do we do next. I think we need to move to the DCO process. The way the paper's here tonight, when the last consultation it's a perfect opportunity, and that's why the paper was here tonight. It's no other reasons than we're having a meeting tonight. Don't have many general services meetings. It's here tonight with the final consultation. It's a nice segue into the next stage, and it moves as a segue into the next stage of where we're moving, and that's why it's here. No other reason. We're putting our last consultation response in. We then move, what do we need next? And the conversation is, what do we need next? Working groups, it's always going to be this. This committee is not big enough for other members across the council. There's 49 people. It's not. It needs to take evidence from everyone else. We've got a non-cooperative member. We've got cooperative members on planning committee. We have cooperative members on. Let's co-opt for an special meeting when the session is. We can co-opt who we want, when we want. I'm not anti-saying that. They can come on here and there. It's not that. It's how the committee is constituted and here. And then when it's pink papers or private sessions, obviously then we can't do that. But then that's when we talk about financing. But we can do everything else. It can be co-opted in. That I'm not saying no tonight. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying we come. And if you write a long list of motions and things, you've got the votes anyway. Why would I? And this is crazy. Like, it doesn't matter. If we was doing this, what Councillor Kent says, it's madness, because we didn't know we knew we were never going to have the votes in this meeting. It was meetings to have an open, honest conversation moving forward. I honestly, it's being open, transparent. Is that a problem I have? I'm sorry if I'm open and transparent to everyone where we want to go. I want to fight this and fight this properly, using the officers and not making it a decision by me and the council officers. And that's it. So I think we should really put a motion in tonight that it doesn't go into the DCO process. I'm very happy with that. So that there's meetings, and if Highways England cancel it, quite rightly, that should continue as our main voice of opposition. And then once it's done that, I think it should be there, and we should have a meeting afterwards, the DCO's in, to constitute what we want next and what working groups. And I think that's a good opportunity. But I'm open for any alterations to the amendments, as long as we have a voice that's coming out tonight of we're moving forward as one.
Thank you, Councillor Coxall. I've penned some possible, which obviously we have to pass through our legal team to move to, well, for you to move, because it's your report, for them to be accepted or voted upon. Councillor Massey, it's obviously a conversation that we had earlier. I understand that Highways England are coming back to the task force with some updated information. Do we know we've got a specific date for that?
I think we were hoping for the September meeting of the task force. Some information coming back that was requested, going back to the previous consultation.
Is there a date roughly? So like 21st or? Oh. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was just going to say, is there anything that officers need to add? But of course, this is more of a discussion.
But can I say?
Yeah,
I would recommend that until such time, the motion tonight, I'm not a legal person to write a motion, but until such time as the DCO is entered, at that point there will be another conversation here where we go forward. But it is our intention to general services not to take control of where we're with our destiny of this council in constitution with everyone here tonight. So it will carry on until the DCO goes, and after that there'll be another meeting to decide what we go, how we work with the working groups. Because I don't want you to think that we're going to take this, remove the Lower Thames crossing, and then not put anything in its place. There was no guarantee, and that should have been on there. There will be something in its place, or numerous ones in its place. It'd be numerous meetings and numerous working groups. And that's not what it's been. It was numerous working groups, just like any other committee sets up task and finish groups. I've been on numerous ones in my 10 years working as a councillor. It always happens. There is task and finish groups, and it tasks and finishes. And it finishes a bit of work, and then the committee looks at it, just like anything else. And that's what we want. And that's how I see it in my head. But if anyone's got any other great ideas, we're open to any great ideas. But it really does need to come out tonight that we are moving to the next stage. It is the next stage, and we're still in that fight with the Highways England.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to continue and just repeat pretty much what everybody else has said so far. So I'm looking at recommendation 1, and I'm suggesting, obviously it's your report, that perhaps you put the amendment to General Services Committee agrees in accordance with the terms of reference of the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force that it be disbanded on submission of Highways England's development consent order, or after its meeting on the 21st of September, whichever is the latter. That way, if they suddenly put it on the 1st, it doesn't just sort of disappear on the 1st of September, and that meeting still goes ahead with that information that was promised comes forward. Certainly, 1.2 will probably change to 1.3, and I will add a little bit onto that afterward. I've put the suggestion forward and it's checked and agreed. But the second recommendation should be something along the lines of that the General Services Committee set up appropriate subcommittees or bodies to respond to specific work streams which will arise from the progress of the Lower Thames Crossing and its construction. Does that sound? I'll just put in it's. So do they sound reasonable? And then obviously for the final one to be added, yeah.
Happy to take any amendments if they don't like what's here. There's this opportunity to say amend it. It's not a cast in stone here. If we're happy to write what I want, I'm happy to vote for this, and want to give some guarantees, write an amendment to what you would see that it should be.
The only amendment I would put would negate the original recommendations, which wouldn't be in order.
In that case, unless any other members have got any suggestions, do you accept those as further ones? Sorry, Councillor Bernardi. So, Councillor Bernardi.
If I heard Councillor Kosher right, I think he was saying that we should have another meeting to decide. So it is not going to be like the 1.1 because, Chair, you are saying that you are still sticking to the disbandment. Sorry, that the task force be disbanded in September or, whenever the submission. But I thought Councillor Kosher already said that is prepared to have another meeting where of the general services where we then discuss the way forward after. So we're not talking about disbanding it now. I mean, maybe I got you wrong, but I thought that's what I heard.
Thank you. Oh, I did it there, so it's my bad. Councillor Cox, do you want to respond?
No. As I see that we've just the motions there, we are moving to at the close of the meeting. The Lower Thames Crossing task force will close, and there will be other working streams and working groups come out of that at the next meeting, as determined by this committee. Is as I say. So we announced tonight to Highways England that we are moving now, and this will be the main committee after the DCO process is in, and if Highways England want to negotiate with us about where they're moving forward towards their public inquiry and through the DCO process, and out of that we will then constitute working groups to what we deem we need to have. And if that deems that there needs to be as good as same group or different groups, my personal preference is specific groups, but I'm open to conversations about what type of group and what that remit is. But we need a remit, and Councillor wrote out the Constitution, which was wide. We need a remit in specific areas, and I'd like to get specific people in the general public who are living in the areas, specifically interested, who are interested in that specific subject. So people who are knowledgeable, and there's plenty of knowledgeable people in the wider communities of Thurrock who would need what a task and finish group would be very helpful with. And a task and finish group that reports back to us with good knowledge only increases our firepower. And at the moment, there's just the 9 people on there, and they've been fantastic during the public consultations, but we now need to get into the gritty of knowledge to each individual item, and especially public. I think the task and finish group immediately should be on public health. Immediately should be on the noise pollution and what's happened, and the light pollution and what we're doing that, but not just specific issues, specific poor papers coming back to us. But that needs to be deemed at the next meeting when we get past the DCO. If we haven't got them, we've just decided it won't be disbanded until at least after the DCO. And at that point, I think we need to have a conversation then of what do we need. And that's all I'm saying tonight. But Highways England need to know we're still on this, and this is we're moving to the next stage of this battle.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Cockshaw. Obviously, the any recommendations before they are moved need to be checked with our legal team. So I'm looking straight at Ian. Do you want me to reread them out again? Yeah, that's no problem. The General Services Committee agree, in accordance with the terms of reference of the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force, that it be disbanded upon the submission of Highways England's Development Consent Order, or after the 21st of September meeting, to return to the General Services.
I'd be very happy to remove that and just add the Development Consent Order at that point, because I think that's really important. Because if we do get a ball kicking, and it misses and it goes in another year, I think there's still, and it could be another consultation then, I think it still should be available and live at the consultation.
That's what it says.
Oh no, it says or at the 21st. I think it shouldn't be.
Or after, because if it's DCO's before, then it allows that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just concerned that I just want to make sure that whenever the DCO goes in, if the DCO is delayed for a year, that consultation, because there could be another public consultation, that is critical, important that we have that machine during, which is very helpful during the public consultation processes. I'm not trying to do that. I think that's making sure it's critical that it stays until such time as that. And as long as that, so sorry, I missed.
Yeah, Ian.
Thank you, Chairman. I think for clarity, it might be easier to just stick with the amendment being the disbandment of the submission of the DCO rather than a specific date, just to avoid confusion there. Because unless that's what you specifically want it to be, I just sense a slight tension between.
But my concern is if they put the DCO in on the 1st of September, then the meeting on the 21st of September wouldn't take place, which Highways England have confirmed they're going to come back with information, which they won't. Sorry. Anna?
Councillor Gladhill, just to provide assistance, I think it's extremely unlikely the DCO is going to be submitted at the beginning of September, for the simple reason Highways England has got to show compliance with the guidance and the legislation, that they've had due regard, that's the words in the Act, to any consultation responses received in relation to this current design refinements consultation. Given that the closing date for that is the 12th of August, I would think it's quite an uphill struggle for them to have had due regard to all the consultation responses by the beginning of September. Therefore, And based on discussions I've had with them recently, it's more than likely to be the end of September. So I think, having heard the discussion, I think if we just refer to until DCO submission, I think that would cover all bases.
Yeah, that seems to be most reasonable in that sense. And then the second, well, what will now be the second recommendation, that General Services Committee set up appropriate subcommittees or bodies to respond to specific work streams which will arise from the progress of the Lower Thames Crossing and its construction.
Thank you, Chairman. My reflection on that one is it's unclear as to when or how those will be set up. So it might just be worth clarifying within that it's a intention to, rather, because that's half reading that they are being set up without the clarity. It would just be sort of preferable if the word intention was in there, just to be clear that it's the intention.
Thank you. And if we can just have one person speaking at the moment, because it can be very confusing for residents that are watching this. So how would you suggest that be specifically worded? My concern is that we end up with the opposite of that, and we only end up with, I know, I'm just plucking one out the air. It's one to do with health, one to do with environment, and then in 9 months, a year, 2 years' time, then there's a very urgent one that comes up in relation to its construction and changes.
Can I answer that, maybe? How about just to give, because I think this document is to give clarity that we're not to stop it. And I think that's the whole intention. So an intention to, at the future meeting, to set up, and it's just for clarity purposes, we are intending to do something else, do something in specific groups, and that is for clarity and confidence. That's all I'm doing. Because
I'm saying it's going to be your return. Sorry, normally at this point I wouldn't, but Councillor Byrne.
Yeah, well, these subcommittees, could we still have Fraser driving that in effect of a chair or a driver or a lead or whatever? Yeah.
That'd be worse than individual. So, yeah, sorry. I suppose it's because we've sat here for a number of years. We all know a process of how these committees work, and we just assume everybody else does, but it's not the case, and that's very poor on my part. Actually, it should be a bit more clear that each new committee would have a new chairperson. Councillor Coxwell, so change that to General Services Committee has the intention to set up appropriate subcommittees and bodies, etc., etc., etc. Sorry, not Councillor Ian. Sorry.
From my perspective, Chairman, those recommendations would now be appropriately clear and enable the members to vote on them. I leave it to members to determine.
Okay, and then finally, just one of the most important ones, in my opinion, that the General Services Committee notes and thanks members of the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force and past and present for their contribution to shaping the proposals. That should be consultation responses.
And could I add, and future help to this committee?
Well, it wouldn't exist in that sense, but yeah. So and consultation responses. Maybe at that point my pen actually finally gives up the ghost. So are we happy with that final change to the final one? And then for Mark to move them as I've said them. Yeah. Councillor Cox, would you move as I've said them? I
do indeed move the vote to a vote.
Okay, so with that, with the change recommendations as outlined, do members want me to go through them again before we vote on each individual one? Yeah. Please correct me if I get this wrong, Ian. The General Services Committee agrees in accordance with the terms and reference of the Lower Thames Task Force that it be disbanded upon the submission of Highways England's Development Consent Order and return to the Programme Committee, General Services Committee. All those in agreement in the chamber, if you'd like to raise your hand. All of those against, if you'd like to raise your hand in the chamber.
Have my vote recorded as again?
You can indeed. All those. Councillor Bernardi, how do you vote? Do you vote for or against the amendment?
I actually do not agree with 1.1 recommendation.
Thank you. So in that case, the amended recommendation falls. So Ian, would it then refer back to the original recommendation, or would we?
Thank you, Chairman. The amendment was accepted by the proposer of the motion, so therefore the motion has fallen.
Just wanted to clarify, just for order. We then go on to the amended one, which would then, I'm just looking at this, would be unnecessary because the first one has fallen. And then the last one equally would fall because we could still thank them for all their input and for past and present members for the contribution to shaping the proposals and the consultations. So I wrote down here for my pen ran out. We could still vote on that because quite frankly, I think the amount of work and effort that the previous chair put into this when it was first put up by attending Cabinet on pretty much all but one occasion, I think needs noting, bearing in mind that he's no longer a councillor. There have been members of the public that have obviously taken part in that as well, who may still not be on the committee. Indeed, Councillor Okanade used to be on the committee, made a valid contribution. So I'm moving that what is 1.2 on this report is voted on. Are we in agreement with that? Agreed. Are we agreed, Councillor Okanade? That's brilliant when we can resort to improv sign language. So with that, that's moved accordingly, and also is the end of tonight's meeting. So I'd like to thank all members and officers for attendance, either electronically or in person this evening, and thank you for their input, and call the meeting to an end at 19:07. Thank you very much.